I have always found verse 30 in Surat al-Tawbah 9 about Uzair among the most violent and outrageous of Muhammad's accusations in his Quran. Will you please clarify this matter?
Uzair is the Arabic Syriac version of the name of Uzra, the scribe. As was usual with Muhammad, he plagiarized but mentioned it only once by name in his Quran. Al-Tawbah 9.30. The Jews call Uzair a son of Allah, and the Christians call Christ the son of Allah. That is a saying from their mouths. In this, they but imitate what the unbelievers of old used to say. Allah's curse be on them. How they are deluded away from the truth. Uzra was a priest, a Levite, and a scribe, a direct descendant of Aaron through Elazar. His father was Seraiah, the chief priest who was executed at Riblah by direct order of Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar. Uzair, or Uzra, or Esdras, the scribe, priest, and reformer, was sent by the Persian king Cyrus the Great after the captivity to Jerusalem, and about whom there are many Jewish legends. Traditionally, the Uzair is buried in Basra, Iraq. What we know about Uzra is found in Uzra chapters 7 to 10 and Nehemiah chapters 8 to 10, where he led the second group of exiles that returned from Babylon to Jerusalem. The book of Uzra covers a period of nearly 80 years, from about 536 BC, when the first Jews returned from the Babylonian exile, to about 458 BC, when Ezra arrived at Jerusalem. It marks the transition time from the fall of the Babylonians, who conquered Jerusalem, destroyed the first temple, and took the Jews, including the prophet Daniel, away into exile, to the rise of the Persians, who in turn conquered the Babylonian Empire and allowed the Jews to return and rebuild their homeland. The above accusation is one of the upstart Muhammad's most egregious, indecent, and unsubstantiated mendacities among the hundreds of others in his Quran. It is a very stupid allegation against the most ardently monotheistic people ever. Jews could never, under any circumstances, associate any other being with God. This perverted statement is based, as usual, on another one of Muhammad's misunderstanding of language, theology, and history, of what he was being taught based upon the grammar and or the meaning of the Hebrew verse upon which he made his erroneous or deliberate misrepresentation. In the scriptures of the Jews, Uzra the scribe was said to have revealed, Banu, once more to the people of Israel the path to God. Muhammad, as was his wont, totally misunderstood the context of the word and thought that it meant Ibnu, son of. Having destroyed the monotheism of the Christians because they believe in the Trinity, this disgusting allegation serves yet another very important purpose in the theological construct of Muhammad, since it implies that his version of Islam is hence the only one that believes in the one and only Allah. Uzra 7.6. This Uzra went up from Babylon, and he was a scribe skilled in the Torah of Moses, which the Lord God of Israel had given, and the king granted him all that he asked, for the hand of the Lord his God was upon him. Artaxerxes, king of kings, to Uzra the priest, a scribe of the law of God of heaven, perfect peace. Nowhere in the whole history of the first monotheist of the world, the Israelites or the Jews, can any of the followers of Muhammad, or anyone else for that matter, find any reference to a son of God being attributed to one of their people. The Quranic accusation is not only offensive in its mendacity, but even more so in its callous and unsubstantiated allegation to imply that the Jews would have ishrak, partnership with God, the same as Muhammad's hated pagans. Our listeners should note that according to Muhammad's Quran and its interpretations, the Arabs are descended from Abraham, but had presumably suffered a case of national amnesia, since they had forgotten their original monotheism and the remembrance of Abraham and Ishmael for 2,500 years, until the advent of Muhammad. The same 2,500 years that the Israelites and the Jews kept their faith perfectly against all odds. The interpreters of the Quran, who definitely know better, continue to perpetuate this calumny and hate-mongering against the Jews. This they do in spite of the fact that they realize full well, based upon the New Testament, that Jesus was crucified, allegedly at the instigation of the Jews, for presumably declaring himself the Son of God, a partner with the Almighty, exactly what Muhammad is accusing the Jews of regarding Uzair. Al-Baydawi says that during the Babylonian captivity, the Torah, the law, was lost, and that as there was no one who remembered the law when the Jews returned from captivity, Allah raised Uzra from the dead, although he had been buried 100 years. And that when the Jews saw him thus raised from the dead, they said, he must be the Son of Allah. This story is supposed to have been revealed in the Quran, Al-Baqarah 2.259. Or take the similitude of one who passed by a hamlet all in ruins to its roofs. He said, "Oh, how shall Allah bring it ever to life after this its death?" But Allah caused him to die for 100 years, then raised him up again. He said, "How long didst thou tarry thus?" He said, "Perhaps a day, or part of a day." He said, "Nay, thou hast tarried thus 100 years, but look at thy food and thy drink. They show no signs of age." The translator of this Quran, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, tries to explain as follows. Number 304. This incident is referred variously, 1. to Ezekiel's vision of dry bones, 2. Nehemiah's visit to Jerusalem in ruins after the captivity and to its rebuilding, and 3. to Uzair or Uzra or Esdras, the scribe, priest and reformer, who was sent by the Persian king after the captivity to Jerusalem, and about whom there are many Jewish legends. As to 1, there are only 4 words in this verse about bones. As to 2 and 3, there is nothing specific to connect this verse with either. The wording is perfectly general, and we must understand it as general. I think it does refer not only to individuals, but to national death and resurrection. Not a single word in either of the Quranic verses is in accord with the biblical record. What is as usual most galling of all is the audacity and total hypocrisy and duplicity of the translators of the Quran, who always fall back on the original verses of the Bible for reference, while at the same time claim that this same Bible had been tampered with and or perverted by the Jews and Christians. The Quran is replete with erroneous, fabricated, plagiarized, contorted, and perverted stories, names and events that are not based on facts or substantiation in recorded history or theology, but uses its accusations as if they were of divine origin, when in reality they are as divine as pig meat is halal or kosher. All the anomalies, contradictions, mendacities, and errors in the Quran can very easily be explained and understood the moment the reader, after studying the subject, realizes that the Quran is actually Muhammad's own alter ego, but cleverly projected into the mouth of the unsuspecting Allah, the pagan rock god of the Kaaba, the black stone. There is not a single letter, let alone a word, a verse, ayah, or a chapter, surah, in the Quran that could have ever been revealed by any omniscient, compassionate, and or merciful divinity.